Your dog is sitting normally, doing normal dog things, and then their tongue appears and begins moving in what can only be described as a licking motion directed at nothing. There is no surface being licked. There is no food present. Your dog is licking the air. Just the air. Specifically, thoughtfully, repeatedly licking the ambient atmosphere of your kitchen. And you are watching this happen, and you cannot decide if you should be concerned or simply accept that dogs are extraordinary. Welcome to Hidden Paw Signals. Today we are going into the air-licking phenomenon because it has several distinct explanations depending on the context in which it occurs, and knowing the difference between them is genuinely useful. Subscribe now because this one is part behavioral science, part sensory biology, and part something your vet actually wants you to know. Let us start with the most immediately interesting explanation, which involves a specific sensory organ that most dog owners have never heard of and that makes the air-licking behavior make complete and beautiful sense. Dogs possess, in addition to their primary olfactory system, a secondary chemosensory structure called the vomeronasal organ, or Jacobson's organ, located at the base of the nasal passage. This organ connects through a separate neural pathway than regular smell and processes a category of chemical compounds that are distinct from standard odor molecules, heavier, non-volatile compounds that carry particularly rich social and environmental information, including hormonal signals, individual identity compounds, and certain stress-related chemical markers. The vomeronasal organ requires direct or near-direct contact with the substance being analyzed to function most effectively. This is where the tongue comes in. When your dog licks the air, particularly in situations where there is something chemically interesting in the ambient air that caught their attention, the lingering molecular signature of a food that was recently prepared, the hormonal chemical trace of an animal that was present, a compound carried in on someone's clothing, the tongue is helping draw those molecules into closer proximity to the vomeronasal organ. The licking motion wets the surface of the tongue and the nasal area, which helps capture and concentrate non-volatile molecules that then get transported to the vomeronasal receptor surfaces. Your dog is not licking nothing. Your dog is chemically sampling the air in a way that activates a separate and supplementary sensory system. The air licking is a precision sensing tool. Your dog does this too? Does it happen in specific locations or at specific times, like near the kitchen or when certain people have recently been in the room? Drop it in the comments because the location and timing is very telling about what they are actually sensing. There is a second category of air licking that is completely different in its origin and meaning, and this one is the one that has a more medical dimension. Repetitive air licking that occurs in non-specific contexts, particularly when combined with other signs like swallowing repeatedly, appearing uncomfortable in the abdominal area, drooling more than usual, or seeming restless and unable to settle, can be a behavioral indicator of nausea or gastrointestinal discomfort. Research on canine nausea behavior, published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior, has identified repetitive licking behaviors, including air licking and surface licking, as among the more reliable behavioral indicators of gastrointestinal nausea in dogs, particularly when combined with the other signs described. The connection between nausea and licking behavior is thought to involve the activation of the brain's nausea response system, which includes increased salivation and repetitive oral motor activity as part of the physiological preparation for the possibility of vomiting. Dogs do not have a cultural response to nausea that includes conscious self-monitoring and restraint. Their nausea responses are purely physiological and behavioral. The licking is part of what their body does when it is dealing with nausea, and the air licking specifically may reflect trying to address the sensation with an oral motor activity when there is no specific surface stimulus triggering it. This is why context is the critical variable for interpreting air licking. Air licking that happens in the kitchen when food was recently prepared, or outdoors when something interesting passed through the area, or when a specific person enters the room, is almost certainly sensory investigation through the vomeronasal system. Air licking that happens in the middle of rest, that seems disconnected from any obvious environmental stimulus, that is accompanied by swallowing, apparent discomfort, or other signs of gastrointestinal distress, is a pattern worth mentioning to your vet.
The two look similar on the surface, tongue out, directed at the air, but the circumstances around them are usually quite different once you pay attention. Does your dog do the air licking in specific situations, or does it seem to come out of nowhere? That distinction will tell you a lot about which category you are looking at. There is also a stress-related licking dimension worth mentioning briefly. Oral motor behaviors, including various licking activities, can increase during periods of mild anxiety as a form of self-soothing, and some dogs develop repetitive air-licking patterns in specific anxiety-provoking contexts during thunderstorms, before vet visits, during car rides. In these cases, the behavior is neither sensory investigation nor nausea. It is self-regulatory behavior. The dog using an oral motor activity to manage mild anxiety in a situation they find stressful. Understanding which of these three categories you are looking at, sensory investigation, physical discomfort, or anxiety, gives you the information you need to respond appropriately. Sensory investigation needs nothing from you except appreciation. Physical discomfort warrants a vet conversation if it is persistent or accompanied by other symptoms of nausea. Anxiety-related licking benefits from addressing the underlying stressor where possible and working with a professional if the anxiety is significant. There's a useful practical framework for determining which category of air licking you are observing that synthesizes all of the above. Ask 3 questions in sequence. First, is there something chemically interesting in the environment right now? A recent food smell, a person or animal who was recently present, something carried in by air or clothing? If yes, sensory investigation through the vomeronasal system is the most likely explanation, and the behavior requires nothing from you. Second, is the air licking happening during or after a meal or at a time when gastrointestinal discomfort might be relevant? And is it accompanied by any other signs of nausea, such as swallowing, drooling, or restlessness? If yes, this warrants observation and possibly a vet call if it is frequent or prolonged. Third, is the air licking happening in a context that is stressful for your dog, and are there other signs of anxiety present? If yes, the stress-soothing explanation becomes more likely, and addressing the underlying stressor is the useful response. Running through these 3 questions in sequence will correctly categorize the behavior in most cases and tell you what, if anything, to do about it. Does your dog air lick in more than one of these contexts? Many dogs do, and the same physical behavior serves different functions depending on the situation. Becoming observant of which context produces which version of the behavior is one of the most genuinely useful skills for understanding your dog's communication more broadly. Research on behavioral flexibility in domestic dogs has consistently found that dogs use the same surface behavior to serve multiple distinct functions depending on context, and learning to read context rather than just behavior is the key to accurate interpretation. Your dog is not doing one thing when they lick the air. They're using a single motor behavior as the output of several completely different underlying processes, and the process that is running depends on what is happening in their world right now. The broader lesson from the air-licking behavior, as with so many of the behaviors discussed on this channel, is the value of context over behavior in reading what your dog is communicating. The same physical action, tongue out, moving, directed at non-solid space, can mean sensory investigation, nausea, stress, or boredom, and the behavior alone cannot tell you which one without the surrounding context providing the necessary interpretation. Becoming a good reader of your dog requires becoming a good observer of context, what preceded the behavior, what the environment contains, what else the dog is doing and not doing, what is happening at the level of the whole body rather than just the single behavior in isolation. Air licking is a good training ground for this kind of contextual reading because the three possible explanations are different enough that careful attention to context makes them distinguishable with reasonable confidence. Your dog is telling you things all day through behavior and context together. The air licking is just one moment in that continuous broadcast. And just so you know where this is grounded, the research on canine nausea behavior and chemosensory processing that I am drawing on comes from the Journal of Veterinary Behavior and Applied Animal Behavior. Those peer-reviewed journals are my sources for everything on this channel. Just a quick note before you go. Everything I share on this channel comes from my own research and learning journey. I am not a vet, I'm not a scientist, and I'm definitely not a certified dog behaviorist. This is just one person going way deep into dog psychology and sharing what they found. So please, if your dog is showing any serious, sudden, or unusual symptoms, do not diagnose it with YouTube. Go see your actual vet. They went to school for this. I watched videos about it. Those are different things. And as always, this video was produced with the help of artificial intelligence. Thanks for watching Hidden Paw Signals. See you in the next one.